Welcome in, listeners. Welcome back to the Flippin' the Bird podcast. I'm your host, Luke Lawhorn, the current sports editor at the Paisano. We have a big day ahead of us. First podcast in a little over a week now. I'm rejoined by both Rylan and Connor, the usual suspects around here. A lot to get into today, starting with UTSA football. We'll talk some Wemby. We'll talk the playoff rankings. We'll talk some football. Before we get into any of that, let me introduce my guys. Rylan, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Ready to talk some balls. Get into it.
Let's go, man.
Yeah, same. It's a very, very busy weekend, so let's get into it.
Yes, let's start first with some UTSA football. Last week it was just Rylan and I. Good podcast, of course, per usual. And we shared the same take on the game. We knew that UTSA would handle East Carolina. We predicted that's what happened, and that's what did happen. They went out and took care of business at home. They won 41-27, beating the Pirates, who we kind of, were sus, was a bad team. They're now 1-7. But UTSA, turned things around, now on a 4-game winning streak. Everything seems to be going the right way. So first I want to start with Rylan, our guy in the box, alongside me and Nick, who's usually on this podcast, however's not been here for about a month. So Rylan, I'm going to start with you. What were your takeaways from Saturday's game?
Just more, playing good on both sides of the ball, right? We had Suehs, who exploded in the first half and then was looking to break the record and just weirdly didn't catch another ball for the rest of the game. But still, 4 catches for 183 in a tub is not bad. And then on defense, you saw Trey Moore, dominate again, 3 sacks, broke the single-season sack record at UTSA. So it's just more good football, and UTSA is starting to stack games where they played great on both sides of the ball, and that's what you want to see as you get further along into the season. And which this week coming up, we have probably the last hard game before we played Tulane, and so we got to make sure we stay playing consistent on both sides of the ball and try to win.
Yeah, I definitely think it was more of a complete game. I think obviously the offense, the main man, Frank Harris, of course. 395 passing yards, 4 TDs. Cephas as well, 4 catches for 183 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he's a dog. Tyke Kellogg as well. It was just a complete performance. It's something that a lot of fans have been kind of wanting. Like, we want more performances like this. And in recent weeks, we've seen more of the UTSA that I think everyone expects to see. So now heading into a game like North Texas, it's going to be tough. It always is. I'm hoping that it's still going to be a complete performance going into Denton because it's not going to be an easy game, and they're going to want to beat us, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, North Texas for me, especially being in Conference USA now going to AAC, they're our biggest, in-conference rival, at least in my eyes. Of course, we have the Texas State and Houston, but they're not in the same conference. Yeah, the UTSA took care of business on Saturday. Frank Harris, you guys already said it, 395, 4 TDs, 20 of 32. He played a pretty great game, had that pick, but I was really impressed with Rocco Griffin, who's actually been marching all over the field this fall. He's been doing a great job. Ever since we've started getting more action in the running game, that's how you get Joshua Cephas for 183 yards on 4 receptions in 1 half. The running game has really opened up everything. And now, going into this Saturday, we play North Texas, like I said, basically our biggest conference rival. And this will be, the last big test until Tulane in the last game of the season. Rylan, I know a couple days ago you talked to the North Texas sports editor. Obviously, that'll be a great article that's coming out later this week. But I just kind of want to get in your head on what you were talking about in Monday. Like, were you confident going into this game? Like, are we going to win that game? Were you making that point across? Do you think we're going to handle business like we have been? Or is this going to be a closer game than these last few weeks?
As the days drag on, I get more and more scared.
That's not a good sign.
Because at first I was like, oh, man, we're better than UNT, even though they've given us problems in the past, or like it's always a good game. Nah, we're going to handle it. But the more and more it goes on, I'm like, ooh. Because you start looking at, okay, let's get one thing straight. The UNT defense is awful. It is not good. In any form or fashion, it's awful. So we can put up points. But the UNT offense is electric. Chandler Rogers, I believe his name is leading. They're 9th in the nation in total yards, 17th in passing yards, 19th in points scored, averaging 35.5 points per game. It's a legit offense. And this UTSA defense has been iffy all year. They've seen some strong performances like against Texas State, and you see some bad performance like against Temple. So it just depends on what UTSA defense we're going to get, because we can handle business if we play, good defense. But if not, it's going to be a high-scoring game. And when it's a high-scoring game, anybody can come out on top, and it's super sketch.
Yeah, and before, Connor, you go, I just want to say that North Texas, the lowest points they've scored all year was 24 when they lost 27-24 to Navy. But all these others, they're scoring 45, 39, 40, 28 against Tulane. So, and as you and I, Rylan, we've talked about, the UTSA's weakest spot is their defense, their secondary. So we'll see how they can hold up against North Texas, Connor.
Yeah, and I think there's a common theme here. Looking at their schedule and look at the teams they play, they've lost some very, very tight games. You look at Tulane, they lost by 7, lost by 3 to Memphis. Obviously, they got blown out by Cal and stuff like that. But they've lost some pretty close games, and the offense does scare me. But me and Aramis had a common theme for the FAU game. We said the FAU offense is pretty scary, and UTSA's defense kind of locked them up pretty good. So I could see something similar happen here, but it is a rivalry, like you said. It's our biggest in-conference rivalry, I guess, other than maybe you would say UAB. But, I'm a little worried, but I feel like the defense is going to do enough, and I feel like if they can get after Chandler Rogers, I think they can cause some problems for the offense.
So Nick isn't here. He'll be in the press box in Denton watching and recapping this game. So he won't give his prediction. But while we're here, before we move on, I just want to kind of go around, give our predictions for the game this Saturday. I'll start. I think UTSA does win, and I think it'll again be by 10-plus points. I'll settle for 10, and I'll go 34-24 game. I believe we can do it. We kind of have their number, and I think we're rolling now. So that's what I'm going with, 34-24.
I'm going to go 42-38. I think it's going to be one of those games. I think it's going to be closer than these past ones, because these past ones, we've seen some good offenses but this is North Texas. They don't like us, and we don't like them. And it's always different, no matter where the teams are at when it's a rivalry game. Not even in college football. You see it in the NFL too. No matter where the records are, sometimes when it's a rivalry like that, they just get up and play different. And I think that they will, especially since they still have SMU on their schedule, and SMU is pretty good. So if they lose this game, and you figure that they might also lose to SMU, then you're looking at not being bowl eligible. So they're gonna want to get up and play and beat UTSA, which they did in 2021 when we were at our best. Probably that was our best season ever. They beat us then, and they probably still think they can beat us now.
Yeah, I'll go a little similar, but I'll go 35-28 UTSA. I think it's going to be a close game. But the thing for me that worries me a little bit is like you said, North Texas, they're going to want to beat us. I still remember the game in 2021 where they blew us out in Denton, and they would love nothing more than to do that again, because at home in the Alamo Dome, we got their number. I would be very confident, but in Denton, I'm a little nervous, but I still think UTSA pulls it out, and I think the defense makes a couple of big stops late in the game, probably seals the deal.
Well, hopefully we'll see what happens this Saturday, and next week we'll come back and hopefully recap how well UTSA dominated. So yesterday, the college football playoff rankings made their debut rankings, and there's a little bit of controversy, at least to me. It looks pretty straightforward to me. A day removed, looking at these rankings, it reads, at least just sticking with the top 6, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Washington, Oregon. Now I don't have a problem with any of these rankings. I think immediate takeaways, they valued strength of schedule, they valued resume, and you could kind of see that listed, especially when you look down and see that Washington is just ahead of Oregon, obviously, because they beat them. However, they have Texas ahead of Oklahoma, even though Oklahoma beat them. So they're really valuing resume. I think it looks pretty good, especially towards the top. I'm going to start with Rylan. Just your takeaways, after these first playoff rankings.
I do like this. I agree with the top 4 wholeheartedly. You got Ohio State at 1. They've been the most, impressive team against competition this year. Georgia and Michigan are there too. They'll have their chance to show that they belong up there as well. Florida State at 4, obviously, I love it. Washington and Oregon at 5 and 6, love it. And don't look now, Alabama at 8. They had a pretty rough start to the season, but a couple games away, you never know who could sneak into the top 4, especially with as much as I hate to admit it, Florida State being pretty shaky and Washington State struggling these past couple weeks as well. But so everything else, though, it looks nice. Except for USC. How is USC a top 25 team?
I mean, of course, when you have Caleb Williams, they're going to make it look like that. I mean, Air Force is undefeated, and they're, at 8-0, still all the way at 25. Then you got all these 2-loss teams. I see a couple SEC teams, LSU, Tennessee, So, Connor, what are your takeaways from the playoff rankings?
No, I think it looks pretty good. I think top 4, I would definitely put Ohio State above Georgia. I think just based off strength of schedule, I think Ohio State's been the number 1 team in the country just based on who they've beaten. I'm pretty fine, even though, obviously the undefeated. I wish Texas was 6, but I definitely agree. 8-0, I get it. It's a little interesting that Oklahoma's below Texas because they beat them, but I think just, like you said, the resume kind of thing kind of makes up for it. I agree. I don't know how USC is a top 25 team. I know they have Caleb Williams. I know the offense, but I don't see it. And they're disrespecting my boys over at the Air Force, man. The AP poll was being very generous to them, and now they're barely making it. But I guess strength of schedule, I get it. But overall, pretty good college football playoff ranking.
And, of course, you see LSU is all the way up there at 14. Mississippi, who Alabama does play Ole Miss, right? Is that this week?
I think it's LSU, Alabama.
LSU, Alabama, you're right. So that's going to be a great game, of course, with LSU at 14 and Bama at 8. If Bama wins that game, because they've been rolling, kind of seem to turn things around. If they win that game, don't be surprised if they jump Texas, even though they beat them. Because the committee's literally telling you that, yes, the head-to-head matchups matter, but ultimately the strength of schedule and what time of year you played matters even more. You see that with the Texas-Oklahoma ranking, even Washington, Oregon, because Oregon's the highest-ranked one-loss team, and they absolutely handled Utah. Tough environment. And even though they lost to Washington, they were in Seattle, and they were doing stuff like going for it, which, is fun and great. That's Dan Lanning's style. However, I think it was still pretty obvious Oregon at least outplayed Washington for a majority. It looked like their ceiling's higher. So, first playoff rankings, I guess we all get the approval. It looks pretty good. And, of course, with these next 4 or 5 weeks, they're gonna change over time. Let's switch leagues. Let's go to the NFL. Let's briefly recap last weekend before we touch on these upcoming games. But just Rylan and I last week, we talked about biggest game of the week. We both concluded it was going to be 49ers-Bengals. We knew that both teams, it was a must-win because going into that game, 49ers were on a 2-game losing streak. The Bengals were basically in, we have to win because that schedule is brutal. And the Bengals took care of business. They won 31-17 against the 49ers, and now they're on a 3-game losing streak. Rylan, who's sitting across from me, I know he's happy because his Seahawks also won, bouncing back from that Bengals loss a couple of weeks ago. So now we're talking about San Francisco on a 3-game losing streak. After, maybe a month into the season, we're like, man, this is the best team, like head and shoulders. Mm-hmm. So as a division rival of the 49ers, do you think they're cooked or can they rebound and reclaim first place in the NFC West?
Oh, they're not cooked. They're slipping right now, but, especially after, making that trade for Chase Young, former number 2 overall pick, Ohio State, superstar. They're going to rebound, unfortunately. They've suffered from, Trent Williams missing time. Christian McCaffrey is 100%. Deebo Samuel hasn't played. And even though, as much as I'm glad that I'm right about Brock Purdy, because we've seen now, everyone hopefully sees now that he's not that type of quarterback that can lead the team. Without,
smooth top 10.
And with bottom 10 maybe. He can't lead the team without having the right people around him, having everything go right. And that's also not just a Brock Purdy thing; it's a Kyle Shanahan thing. I think I saw a statistic that he's 0-37 when they're down 8 points going in the fourth, and 1-38 when down 3. So that whole team isn't built for adversity. So they'll rebound in the regular season, but I don't believe that they will make a playoff run like everybody's expecting them.
Jeez, man, how much help do the 49ers need on defense? I mean, they literally, it's insane. But I don't think they're done. I was very impressed, though, with the Bengals. I mean, they've really kind of started to bounce back. I mean, when Joe Burrow's on, 28 of 32, 283 yards, 3 TDs. He was literally almost perfect.
He might have played his best game in his career, like, actually.
Yeah.
I think so. I think, honestly, in terms of his I would just say NFL career, he's definitely as one of his top 3.
Especially considering who we went against.
Going against that defense was healthy. Like, obviously, the offense was missing pieces, but the defense was healthy. And just that first drive of the game when he's fighting off a couple sacks and turns around, spins right, and throws it to T for the first down. Like, just doing things like that.
Yeah, he's honestly a generational quarterback. I think he's one of the best. But, Brock Purdy, man, we talked about him a little bit. I think he's kind of getting exposed, like Rylan said. I think when you got the talent that San Francisco has, it's going to make the quarterback, all he's got to do is just make the throw. It's easy throws. And the offense is set up to help him, succeed. Mm-hmm. When he doesn't have some options or there's some injuries, especially on the offensive line, he can get exposed. I think you're seeing that now a little bit. I don't think they're done, though. I think San Francisco's still a definite contender. It's just going to be interesting to see if they bounce back because they got to kind of bounce back quick. They're in a pretty bad funk. But no, I don't think they're done just yet.
No, guys. See, you guys got the wrong idea. Obviously, Bengals handled them, but that should be no surprise. We handled everybody in the NFC West. We kind of went 4-0. The 49ers jumped out to this season, guns a-blazing, and yeah, they're on a 3-game losing streak. But should Brock Purdy get all the blame? I don't know.
Yes.
Because if we go down to the game they first lost against Cleveland, who is tough, Cleveland stomped the Bengals, Seattle barely escaped. Mm-hmm. In San Francisco, Brock Purdy, sure, he might have been bad, but the last drive of the game, he led him in field goal range, and Michigan kicker Jake Moody, he missed the chip shot. They lose 19-17. So sure, he didn't play perfect, but he did what the quarterbacks do. He did what Tom Brady got credit for 20 years. Playing at such an average game and leading a game-winning drive, and you're the GOAT. Then the next week they play the Vikings, and the Vikings were similar to the Bengals. Both Joe Burrow and Kirk Cousins played great games. Kirk played a very good game against the 49ers, against also that healthy defense, and they were also in win-now mode after they started like 0-3, 1-4, whatever they were. And now they're on a couple game winning streak. And that was without Justin Jefferson. So really, if anything, I feel like this defense is just getting exposed. Without Justin Jefferson, the Bengals, who got crushed by the Titans a few weeks ago, went out there. Brock Purdy, he played okay against the Bengals until he threw 2 interceptions. But one of those interceptions was just low-key good by Jermaine Pratt, batting it out of the air.
Threw it right to him.
Okay, well, he was running to the right, they all make little silly mistakes. So he almost came out of it against the Browns. We wouldn't even be talking about him if they had won that game, if Jake Moody made it. And then both Kirk Cousins and Joe Burrow have their best games of the season, maybe careers.
I just don't think you would be defending Jimmy G if it was Jimmy G. Because Jimmy G and Brock Purdy literally the same exact thing.
No.
Jimmy G got a contract from the Raiders off of being able to manage the Kyle Shanahan offense and get to the NFC Championship. And now you're seeing Jimmy G in Las Vegas, and he's pretty awful.
He fits the cog. Brock Purdy fits the cog. He does what he's asked. He gets it done. They've gotten in a little stump here, this 3-game losing streak. But who do they play this week, Or are they in their bye now?
Yeah, in their bye.
So there's it. And, just like the Bengals, when teams come out of their bye, they get re-motivated. They're rested, I believe that's what's going to happen with Brock Purdy. He's had a few interceptions, 5 in the last 3 games. He's going to dial it back, and he's going to, continue being the top 15 quarterback that he was his first, 10 to 15 games in the league. Okay, before we move on to this week, last thing I want to talk about from last week is the Kansas City Chiefs lost. And they're obviously a great team. They're most people's picks just because they have the best player ever at quarterback. Just briefly, I just want to ask y'all, is that loss to the Broncos, which, by the way, is their first loss to the Broncos since 2015? Yeah. I was in 7th grade. That's crazy. Yep. Barack Obama was president. Even crazier. I just want to ask, is this something or is it nothing?
It's nothing. You beat somebody however many times in a row, a bunch, I don't even remember the exact number. They're going to get one on you eventually. And I think they just caught them on a bad day. I think, nobody's taking this game as should we worry about the Kansas City Chiefs? Because the Broncos, low-key, have been starting to put it together. And, the defense has been playing a lot better ever since they got dropped 70 on them to Miami. So, This is just one of those things, you go in there expecting to play a bad opponent. It's a division opponent. You just get
They're facing a Hall of Fame quarterback.
They are facing a top 10 quarterback to ever play in the league, Russell Wilson. So, you get caught slipping one time, but I don't think – they've had losses like this before in seasons that they won the Super Bowl, so I don't think it's anything.
Yeah, I don't think it's too much. I wouldn't look too much into it. Obviously, it's a bad loss, but Denver's kind of starting to put it together a little bit. I'm not going to lie. It's definitely better than the 70 points that got dropped on by the Miami Dolphins. So, I think it's honestly a really good win for the Broncos. Russell Wilson, getting it done still. I definitely agree. Great quarterback. Probably going to be a Hall of Famer. But I wouldn't look too much into it if you're looking at the Chiefs.
Yep. And I definitely, the Chiefs are going to come back very motivated, especially now this week they go to Germany. Mm-hmm. Am I correct? Okay. And they play the Dolphins. That's going to be a great game. At the crack of dawn. You have to wake up at 8:30 on Sunday to watch that. And there's a great slate of games this weekend. So we have the Dolphins, Chiefs, and then in the afternoon, the noon slot, we have Seahawks, Ravens. Then we have Cowboys, Eagles, and then we finish it off with Bills, Bengals. So 12 hours from 8:30 a.m. until that 7:20 start time, where there's going to be football games all day long. So Rylan, what games are you looking forward to most this Sunday?
Well, obviously, Seahawks, Ravens. That's just two teams that are insanely hot right now. I don't think we're going to win, but I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people are thinking. So I'm looking forward to that one. And then, obviously, Eagles, Cowboys. Because, these are two of the most talkative fan bases in the league. They hate each other more than they hate anything else in the world. And, we're going to learn a lot about those two teams when they play each other. So those two games I'm really excited for.
I'll kind of follow the trend. I'll go Cowboys, Eagles, obviously. Not very confident at all in this game. I don't think we're going to win. I just hope we play close. That sounds really sad. I just know how the Cowboys are. I remember San Francisco. I don't want to do that again. The other game, it'd be – we were talking about the Chiefs bouncing back. What a way to do it if they beat the Dolphins. I think that's going to be a really great game. Man, see, I watch soccer. I watch European soccer, so I wake up early in the morning on the weekend, so I'm going to be used to that. That's going to be like tradition for me. Y'all gotta keep up with it. Come on.
I'll try this week. And what's interesting looking at this? So both the Dolphins and Chiefs are 6-2. So obviously whoever wins this will have the upper hand in the standings. And then the Dolphins' divisional opponent is the Bills, who play the Bengals. And both of those teams are kind of in win now. For the Bengals, we just got a terrible start of the season. We have to, dig ourselves out of the hole. The Bills lost to the Patriots a couple weeks ago. Just, they'll look great, but then they'll lose the season opener to the Jets, or like the Patriots a few weeks ago, like I just said. And so now with two divisional opponents playing, it makes it interesting for that seeding, as well as the Bengals and the Ravens. Hopefully Seattle helps us out like they did last week against the Browns. So you think the Ravens win. And, that's not a bad pick.
No, yeah. Well, the Ravens are just good, and we're good. But we've been struggling in the red zone, and I think against a team like that, they're going to be able to match. Like, we're not going to be able to hold them down as much as we have, like, the Cardinals or, like, whoever.
And Baltimore, yeah. And they're going to be extra on alert because I feel like they sense that Bengals presence. They know they're creeping on them because they know that the Browns and Steelers aren't going to stay at 2-3. It's going to be between Baltimore and Bengals, how it has been the last 3 years for 1-2 in the division. And, they're rolling right now. But obviously, Bills-Bengals is my favorite game of the week because I think there's a lot of implications on that. Just like there was last year, with the DeMar Hamlin game, how that game literally set up seeding between 1, 2, and 3 with Kansas City and those two teams. This year, possibly will be the same thing. So that, Dolphins, Chiefs, all these AFC teams, it'll be a great slate for this weekend. All right, so let's go to the NBA because we got to talk some Spurs, who last night played. I'll say yes, they didn't have Devin Booker, but they beat the Suns with Kevin Durant 115-114, which is crazy because I saw, at halftime they were losing by a lot. I watched the second half. They obviously come back to win. Keldon Johnson, 27 points. Victor scored 18 points. A week ago, they got their first win against Houston when he had 21 points, 13 points in the fourth quarter in overtime. So they're 2-2, in their first 4 games of the season. It's been exciting to watch. So, Rylan, do you have anything to say about Victor Wembanyama's first, week to the season and how the Spurs have gone so far?
Victor himself is looking real good. Like, I think he's coming, as advertised, with, expecting the growing pains and learning as you go. the team, hasn't been great. They were down 20 at one point against the Suns. They had the lead for the most of the game against the Mavs. Couldn't close it out. So they're just showing their youth. That's something that you had to expect, coming into the season, which is why I didn't pick them to be a playoff team. Even though Connor said, the 4 seed or something like that. I was like, I don't know about all that. So they have the pieces. It's just all about continuing to play and continuing to grow within each other and learning how, they play with each other. But, man, that game was amazing last night. I tuned out to do a paper, tuned back in when I gave up on my paper, and was watching. And then to see, him steal that from Kevin Durant, I was so lit in my room. I was yelling, I can't lie. So it was a good win, and I think they're really going to feed off this energy. And I think, who do they got next?
They play the Suns again tomorrow.
They play the Suns again tomorrow, so, they might sweep the Suns if that's the last time they play. So, I mean, you never know. Winning like that can do a lot for a young team.
Oh, I know. It was such a great win last night. It was just, I think they didn't lead at all until the last play of the game, literally the last 1.6 seconds or whatever it was. Great win. I think for Wembanyama, obviously you can kind of see the growing pains a little bit, and that was to be expected. I tell people you got to give him time. He's a 19-year-old kid. He's never played in the NBA before. It's going to take time. But I think that also goes with the team as well. I think it's a big difference having a player like that and putting him into the starting lineup. So it's going to take time for that to grow. But I think, we saw it in the Houston game when they won. You saw it in this game. Especially in the fourth quarter, he's low-key. He's clutch. He's pretty clutch, man. That Houston game, he really took over. So I think it's been a pretty decent first week. I think obviously they really should be 3-1. They should have beat Dallas, but I won't get into that. But overall, pretty good. I like what I see from young Victor.
Well, Dallas right now is, there's only 2 undefeated teams actually already in the Western Conference. 3 total, but in the Western Conference, Nuggets and Mavericks. So Mavericks are cooking, and right now, Luka might be MVP, 3 games in, what he did against the Spurs. No, but Wemby's been great. And like you said, how clutch he's been, that's just so crazy to even think about. Just being 19 years old, you go to another country in your second game, he came into the fourth quarter with 8 points, and up until that game, They're forcing him out of the paint. They're just bigger bodies. They're forcing him out. He comes in the fourth quarter with about 10 minutes left with 8 points, and he scores 13 points the rest of the way and in overtime. Whether that's getting 2 blocks on one end of the court and then going back and getting a dunk and then getting the game tying layup, making free throws. Just a bunch of things that you would never think a 7'3", 7'4", whatever he is, a player would do. So I obviously don't think the Spurs are going to make any sort of playoff run. But, it's crazy what basketball specifically, what momentum can do, because you're just, hooping every 2 to 3 days. They'll probably get crushed by the Suns tomorrow. Okay. But then they play the Raptors and the Pacers and the Knicks and the Timberwolves, who, they're not really in contention for anything either. And it's just so early in the season that a lot of these other veteran teams like the Suns and even the Clippers, who still handled them but didn't play really any of their starters, at least majority minutes, that anything can happen, especially when you have Wemby and Vassell, who's pretty up and down. So is Keldon Johnson. They all are. They're all young. They're all finding their ways around. So yeah, they're probably going to lose tomorrow, but they come back to Frostbank Center, come back to San Antonio on Sunday. They play the Raptors, and who knows, maybe if they get above 500, that'll provide some momentum. Last thing I want to talk about in the NBA, just touch on, because James Harden finessed his way out of another organization, getting exactly what he wanted for the 3rd time in about 2 years. Cries his way out of Houston. I shouldn't say cry, but, ends up getting what he wants. Gets out of there, goes to Brooklyn, doesn't work out, gets out of there, goes to Philly, and basically did the same exact thing, and it worked again. So now he's in LA with Russell Westbrook and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So who knows how that's going to go. I just want to get your immediate reaction on just the whole thing. Do you think it's going to work out for the Clippers? Or what do you have to say about James Harden? What are your takeaways?
As a former huge fan of James Harden, because I lived in Houston all my life up until a year and a half ago, what James Harden does on a yearly basis, it's starting to be disgusting. It's nasty, and I don't like it. The ability to just move around wherever you want when any type of adversity comes your way, it's low key embarrassing, and it's low key a bad look for the team. For the league, I think, because who wants to see that? Who wants to see, new super teams every year that don't work out, and then he just leaves and gets however much money ever he wants and going wherever, these nasty trade packages that are full of nothing, packaging peanuts. It's bad for the league, and I don't think it's going to work out in LA unless one of the Kawhi, Paul George gets injured, so he has to step up and kind of take over the team. That's the only way I could see it working. But especially with Russ, there's no way it'll even come close to working.
I think there's just too many big personalities in the locker room. I think that's what's going to get. They're going to start butting heads. I don't like the trade for the Clippers. I think they gave away too much of their bench. I mean, they gave up Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum, KJ Martin, some pick. They gave an unprotected first-round pick, too. I mean, that's a lot, man. I mean, James Harden, obviously, one of the greatest three-point shooters the league's ever seen.
Greatest scorers ever.
One of the greatest, honestly, one of the greatest scorers ever. But like you said, anytime he faces adversity, he just runs away. It's frustrating because I used to love James Harden. When he was on the Rockets, I used to, as much as it pained me because I'm a Spurs fan, but he was one of the best. And
he was cooking.
Yeah, literally. And so now I just don't see it working. I feel like him and Russ are probably going to butt heads, or him and whoever out of the four.
It's going to butt heads to somebody.
It's going to probably be Russ, I think. But I just don't see it working out for either side.
I actually like this trade for both sides. Like you said, I think the Clippers gave up a good amount to give Philadelphia. And who knows, Joel Embiid just won an MVP. So if he has an MVP-type season, which is just be a top 5 player in the NBA, which, of course, I make that sound like it's so easy to do. But he's totally capable of doing that. And him doing that with a good, solid bench, who knows what that could bring. I like it for Philadelphia, especially, they got rid of the toxicity in there, which is important. Yeah. And shipped it to LA, where it seems like there's a lot of toxicity. However, I don't really think him and Russ will butt heads because, one, they're already close. And Russ is close with all of them. I'm not exactly sure with Paul George, or Kawhi Leonard, but I know him and Paul George, obviously. Him and James Harden go all the way back, and all 4 of them are from the LA area. So I feel like when you're playing when you're at home, things just work out. I think Russ and the Clippers ended last year pretty great. Obviously they didn't have the success in the playoffs, but Kawhi was hurt. And Russ played his best basketball since, aside from Washington, back from OKC. And then him and James Harden went to Game 7 in the first round of the playoffs in 2020. They won that series against the Thunder. They go and lose to the Lakers, who won the championship. So, I don't know. I think it can work because at this point, they weren't the favorites anyway. You got the Nuggets, you got both the Lakers and Warriors trying to run it back. You got the young Kings coming. So if you're the Clippers, you're already like, okay, our current iteration won't work. Let's make a change. We got nothing to lose. We have extra star power now. I don't know who's going to bring the ball up. That is a big question. Because I assume Russ, but then, I know Paul George, Kawhi, and James Harden are going to want to shoot it. But that could help Russ, because he's going to be driving into the paint now. He's got 3 shooters. I mean, James Harden's still going to shoot it. Paul George is still going to shoot it. Kawhi's going to shoot it. I think it works out.
You think they all start? Or you think that's one of them comes off the bench?
No, they all start.
They all start.
There's no way one of them doesn't start. If anyone doesn't start,
Russ, right?
It'd be Russ.
But he doesn't want to do that.
And not even that, because he's shown an ability, he will, with LA, but I think Ty Lue actually likes how he plays. I think he likes him as a starter. And I think this move is more so how the new NBA rule with resting and load managing, how you can't have, multiple all-star level players sit out at one time. But now that you have, a plethora, you have 4 different high-level guys who at any given night could go 30, 40 plus, maybe not 40 for Russ nowadays. But, he still did a couple times last season. He's still capable of doing things like that. Maybe once every blue moon, but who knows? Maybe that's a game you need it. Like tomorrow, as they play the Lakers, that's always a big game. Battle of LA. And the Clippers own the Lakers, by the way. They've handled them for, ever, it seems like, in our era. So
you think that if they matched up in 2020, the year that they played, the Clippers would have beat the Lakers?
In 2020?
Yeah.
Was that the year? Well, that was in the bubble. That's when they gave up a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets.
Yeah. Do you think that they would advance? They would beat the Lakers?
Oh, yeah, for sure. That was a good team, too. I was such a Clippers hater, but that was a good team with Patrick Beverley, who should not be in the league. He's the equivalent of Brock Purdy, but just, jerk in the league. Intentionally injured Russell Westbrook back in 2005. Intentionally injured players throughout his career. Patrick Beverley, I could be in the NBA. He just has high energy and effort. And he's obviously, well liked by some players, hated by most, because that's just the kind of person he is. But then Kawhi was still low key in his apex. Paul George, first season outside of OKC, he was cooking, but the injuries, and obviously they just collapsed down the stretch. Yeah. So, back in 2020, they definitely would have taken care of the Lakers. Absolutely. Okay. Let's switch to a sport we don't really talk much about as our last topic. Let's go to the MLB. Our state team, the Rangers, Game 5 is tonight. They lead 3-1. They have the chance to defeat the Arizona Diamondbacks and win the World Series. In about 2 hours they play. So, Connor, I'm going to start with you. You've been doing recaps and predictions all postseason long. Hopefully you do another one this week, see what you got. Who do you have winning tonight? Do the Rangers finish it off?
I'm actually going to say no. I don't think the Rangers finish it off tonight. I think the Diamondbacks are going to play. They're going to kind of go back to their roots a little bit. They like to steal bases. They like to bunt. They like to play small balls, what they call it in baseball. So they're going to try and do that. I think they're going to win tonight. I think Nathan Eovaldi for the Rangers has kind of been getting rocked a little bit in the World Series. So I can see this going back to Arlington, but I think the Rangers will get it done in Game 6.
Garcia's not playing tonight, right?
No, he's not.
So, I can see the Diamondbacks taking this, but I don't think the Diamondbacks will win the series. I think the Diamondbacks are overachieving, low-key.
Oh, yeah.
I just think that they'll win this one, and then the Rangers will finish it out in Arlington. The Rangers are just a better team, straight up. Which, thank God they beat the Astros, because if not, the Astros would have won their, third World Series, and I don't think I can handle that. So
Third in 7 years.
That's disgusting. But, yeah.
I have the Rangers finishing it off tonight just because Corey Seager might be the best player, in this postseason. He's been killing it. He's been coming up clutch, making up big plays that we're going to be talking about for years from now. So, briefly, I do have the Rangers getting it done tonight. That's a wrap on today's episode. Had a lot of great combos, basketball, football, baseball, college football playoff poll. Can't wait to get back in here next week to talk about all our predictions, talk about the Bengals beating the Bills and the Seahawks beating the Ravens. Can't wait to discuss that next week. Thank you guys for listening. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.